Okay, so again, welcome to our workshop on art for our Upstream Battle campaign. This is a bit of an unusual subject for us to be discussing. Usually, I am here in a live lesson talking about litter or climate change or biodiversity, things we can do for the environment. But today, we're going to be talking about art and how we can use that as a tool to help the environment. So the plan for today is to have a quick reminder of our competition brief because we're all here to make a piece of artwork that describes our thoughts and feelings about marine litter. So we're going to keep our eye on the prize and remind ourselves of what our goal is after this workshop. And then we're going to have a discussion of our thoughts and feelings about the issue of marine litter because it is kind of a frustrating issue. And I think a good discussion about that will help us create a good piece of art. And then we're going to look at how we can put these emotions into our artwork. So first of all, our competition brief. So as you know, we are all here to think about making a piece of artwork that describes the issue of marine litter and inspires other people to take action. And your artwork can be many different forms. You can use a model, sculpture, photographs, videos, or poetry. But there's a couple of challenges in this. First of all, your artwork has to reuse something like plastics or paper or metal. And this is stuff that would have otherwise been recycled or thrown away, but you're going to use those materials to create your artwork instead. Now, there is a litter survey as part of Upstream Battle, and what you might do is find some litter that you think would be really useful to make sculpture out of. Maybe it's a type of litter that you find a lot of in your area, so you think that might be a good thing to show people to use as your materials. So if you do this, please make sure that you do so safely, and there's some guidance in our Clean Up Scotland document that you should all have that will help you to do so safely. And the second challenge is that if you're making a physical piece of art, because remember, we can also make poetry, or we could make a video or take a photograph, you need to remember to make sure that your artwork is able to be recycled afterwards. This is one of the key aspects of the STEM part of the art challenge, right? So you need to find a way to avoid using non-recyclable materials, like maybe sellotape or some paints or some glues, because if we use those on our art materials, that means we can't recycle them because they have lots of other different materials mixed in with them, and then we can't put them in the recycling. And if we're talking about reducing litter and waste, it kind of makes sense to make a piece of artwork that we can take apart after we're done looking at it, however long that might be, and make sure that we're not contributing to the problem of waste and litter. And the third bit, and what's going to be most of our focus today, is that your piece must convey your message about source to sea marine litter in a fun and creative, artistic way that can be understood by lots of people so that hopefully it will inspire lots of people to take action on the issue where they live too. Oh, and here's a list of the ways that you can be creative, right? We're talking about models where you piece things together to create a sculpture, or you could take a photograph of an area that's affected by marine litter, or perhaps a beautiful area that you'd like to see preserved from marine litter. You can make a sculpture. Usually a sculpture, as opposed to a model, is one where you're using something to form into a shape instead of sticking things together. You could make a video telling people about the issue or showing beautiful places near you. Or you could write a poem. Excuse me. And the next challenge is that your artwork should be done in a group. So maybe one entry per class or per group of pupils. If you have a big class, you might want to divide them up. And good thing is that you're supposed to provide a brief description of your work. So maybe an explanation of why you've used certain materials or where your piece was inspired from. So this is no more than 500 words, which sounds like a lot at first, but it's really not a whole lot. And that will allow you to tell a bit of a story about how you made it and why you used the materials that you did. Okay, so the next bit is our discussion about marine litter. I'm wondering how many of you have been to visit the Arrochar foreshore? Probably not all of you, because for some of you it's a bit far away. But how many of you have been to Arrochar Beach? I have a couple of times. I've been privileged to visit with a couple of primary schools to see what it's like. And I'm wondering how many of you have been down there to have a visit. Just pop your name in the chat, or you can unmute and say hello if you have. If you haven't, that's okay too. We're only using Arrochar as an example. There's lots of other places that are affected by marine litter too. Or maybe you'd like to tell me about a place near you that's affected by marine litter. So there's a couple of you saying in the chat that there's a few of you who've been there. Mhm. How about, would anyone like to tell me about a favorite place or a nice place near you that has a problem with marine litter? For me, there is a burn in a beautiful park in my village. I guess that's still marine litter. It's affected quite a bit. And also, I really like going to Portobello, but every time I go there, I find lots of nurdles and little bits of plastic, and that makes me sad. Bowling Harbour, I've never been there. Islay and beside, I'm going to say this wrong, Gellert. And there's litter in the Clyde walkway beside Mrs. Pace's school in Cambuslang. Someone's saying in the chat that there are some pollutants at their beach, but it's not as bad as up at Arrochar. Yeah, I don't think we'd find another place in Scotland that's quite as bad as in Arrochar. We've learned in Arlo's lesson earlier why that is, because of tides and because of just where Arrochar happens to be. It's a geography and tidal issue. So we know why Arrochar is bad. The Clyde Falls, yeah. There's quite a few of you saying that there's a place near you that you like to go that has marine litter in it. And I'm just wondering if some of you might be willing to tell me what you think of that. How does that make you feel? While you're thinking about that, I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures that I took at Arrochar the last time I was there. And I had been quite a while ago now, let's say maybe 5 or 6 years before this, maybe longer actually. And I remember I had memories of it being quite bad, but I had forgotten just how bad it actually is. The smell is pretty bad. It's just awful seeing birds trying to nest and all the bits of plastic. It's just layer upon layer. If you haven't been to Arrochar, I can maybe give you a small description. What looks like piles of dried seaweed and leaves here is interspersed, mixed with tons of plastic. So when you're walking on the shore, your feet sink in and you think at first, oh, it's seaweed, but it crunches like plastic bottles. It's just layer upon layer upon layer of plastic. And it's really quite sad. There's a lot of you saying the same kinds of things, agreeing with me here. Saying it makes you feel sad for the river fish who have to avoid litter and need to live among the waste. Miserable, sad, angry, upset, disgusted, and disappointed by our actions. Now that, yes, that is a good one. Annoyed, sad. I think what's particularly miserable, let's say, about Arrochar is that there's a wee village there, as many of you know, there's a nice village there. And so many people live so close to this piece of foreshore, and they can't sit on this beach. They can't enjoy the beautiful scenery because, I mean, look at that. That is beautiful. But they can't enjoy it because of all of the mess. A few of you are saying you're sad and worried. And one school has actually said someone says they're scared by the mess. This leads me very nicely, actually, into my next question, which is, how many of you find that this mess, this issue, talking about environmental issues makes you feel really anxious? Because it does to me. And one of the things that I think is very important is when we're talking about environmental issues, um, especially when we're talking about things like climate change, because that's what I'm usually on your screen talking to you about is climate change or, you know, biodiversity or litter, right? I'm usually talking to you about problems that need to be solved. I think it's really important, especially as people my age, that we don't heap a problem onto people your age because that's not fair. And feeling anxious about a problem doesn't feel nice. A lot of you feel anxious. Yes. Well, I can tell you that there are a lot of us who are working in environmental issues, a lot of us who work for Keep Scotland Beautiful, which is an environmental charity. We feel anxious too, and we want to do something about it. And we would like to try to turn that anxiety into hopeful things about what you hopeful about what you can do to help. Hope in that you can make a difference and make a difference, not in the sense that this is your problem to fix, because it's all of our problems to fix, as we know, right? And we also know that even though we can take individual actions, there's a big systemic problem. There's a big worldwide problem of using too much packaging, using plastic for the wrong things. These are big problems that governments and industries need to fix. Okay, so one of the best ways to take that anxiety that makes us feel really bad, right? Makes us not want to think about environmental issues. We just want to do this because it makes us feel horrible. A really good way to take that anxiety and turn it into something useful is to be an environmental advocate, right? Now, a good thing, just before we get onto that, is that you're not alone in feeling like litter is a problem. Okay, 87% of people in Scotland agree that litter is a problem. See, Keep Scotland Beautiful does a lot of work with schools, as you know, but we also do a lot of work with businesses and communities, and local government. And one of the things that we do is we do a survey every year and we ask people, what do you think of the litter problem? Do you think it's getting worse? So we know that lots and lots of people think it's a problem. Now, one teacher has put in the chat that this statistic makes people sad. I can see why, but also maybe if it makes you feel sad, 87% of people agree with you, but that's 87% of people who want to fix it. And for us, that makes us hopeful because that means that 87% of people agree with us. And we're hoping that if 87% of people did something about it, we could make it a whole lot better. I think it would be very frustrating for us if this number was very small. If we looked outside our window and saw lots of litter, but only, say, 10% of people agreed with us that it was a problem, then we might feel very frustrated indeed. But most people agree with us, so we're hoping that most people will help us fix it. The other thing is, now this looks complicated, but the thing to take away with this is that young people feel more strongly about this even than older people. Young people are even more keen on fixing this problem. They are more likely to see that litter is a problem in their local area. So if you're feeling upset and worried about this, you are definitely not alone because lots and lots of young people feel the same. More than 7 out of 10 young people think that litter is a problem. This is good though, because it means that 7 out of 10 young people want to do something about it. Now, all of these headlines really are about climate change, but the idea is the same as for litter. There are a lot of people who are anxious about these things. There are a lot of people anxious about climate change and a lot of people anxious about litter and other. I mean, we all know that these things are related, right? Climate change, litter, and biodiversity problems, they all go hand in hand. It's all different pieces of the same issue and that we need to take better care of the planet that we live on. Somebody has put in the chat that this is young people's future, and that's exactly right. But I think that's why the anxiety is so strong in young people, because you feel very strongly that you want to protect your future. And I think that's a burden that is sometimes placed on young people that we need to be very aware of. Okay. There's a lot of anxiety about environmental issues. There's a lot of urgency, right? But like I was saying, one of the best ways, There are other ways too. Obviously, self-care is very important here, right? But one of the best ways to encourage other people to take action on environmental issues and to help to ease that anxiety that you might be feeling is to speak up. The environment needs advocates, right? It needs people that will share information and speak up about how they're feeling about it. And for some reason, it's particularly strong when young people do this. And I think it's because you're right. This is your future that you're speaking about. And it's very important that your views and your voice is heard and is taken seriously. Because all too often, it is people my age that are talking about the environment. And I think we really need to make space for young people for them to be heard. Okay, now advocacy is about more than writing a big article in a newspaper or speaking in public, because I know that even though I find speaking in public quite easy, a lot of people don't. They don't like speaking in public, and they maybe don't like writing big articles in a newspaper. And that's not, that's part of it, sure. But the arts also have a really important part to play in protecting our natural environment. Quite often, when we talk about working on environmental issues or environmental advocacy, we think of science because the science is very important in helping us to understand what is going on in our world. And so we quite often think of, climate science or chemistry, biology. We think of mathematics to model the climate and tell us what's going on. And I think sometimes we forget that the arts are also extremely important because we make art about things that are important to us, right? We make art about things that we value. And so I think art about the environment is a really important way of showing that we value the environment. We would like to protect it. Okay. So now that we are thinking about the kinds of things that we want to express, and well, first of all, I guess before we move on, would anyone, because I know I've stirred up lots of feelings here, right? Does anyone have anything they would like to share about how they're feeling about these issues? Any questions about what environmental advocacy means? I want to rush through this because I know that what I don't want to do is to stir up all these anxious feelings and then just move on because that's not fair either. I really do appreciate you sharing all of your feelings with me before about how the issue makes you feel and that you feel very anxious about what it is that you can do. I would say that what you're doing right now is extremely important. Joining this lesson and taking part in our campaign, thank you so much. Even just the fact that you're interested in the issue is something important to do. So you're already doing something about it. Yes. Miss Devlin's class says you're all worried and heartbroken about the issues of marine litter. I find that actually, it's actually very upsetting. Yeah. Miss Allison's class says they are disappointed in themselves. Well, I have to say, Miss Allison's class, it's not your class that is solely responsible for the whole of the marine litter issue. As we know, it's a complicated thing. It involves lots of different pieces of the puzzle that need to fit together, and we need to work on quite a few things. I don't I don't want to leave you in this workshop feeling miserable. It is a big problem. You're right, and we do need to do something about it. But that's what we are doing right now, telling other people about it. Especially since there are so many other important things going on in the world today that might worry people. Maybe some people would think, well, marine litter is not really the most important thing, but bringing attention to it and continuing to be interested in it, and also obviously continuing to make sure that your waste goes in the right place. Those are all very important things, and they're more than some people are doing for sure. Please try not to feel guilty about this. This is not, I'm not here to lecture you or tell you that it's your fault. Right. So we're going to cheer ourselves up now by looking at some art. How's that? We're going to think about some of the things that we could use If you've been to a place that has a lot of marine litter, maybe you already know. Maybe you're sitting here thinking you already know what you want to make. You already know how you want to express what you want to say. I would say, I meant to say at the beginning, a lot of the competitions that we've done in the past are for something like a campaign poster. But this time we're looking for something a little deeper, right? So we're looking for an actual piece of artwork. Now, your description will tell us the story of that. But this time we're hoping to move slightly further on from campaign poster to inspiring art piece. Now, I'm sure a lot of you already have some ideas, but I wanted to make sure that I showed you some examples from other competitions that we've had. You might recognize some of these that are good examples of reuse. So maybe you want to use something natural. And if that's the case, obviously you need to make sure that you can return it to the natural environment when you're done. But that's an option. There's these land art, I guess it's called, where you form a pattern or a picture and you take advantage of the colors and shapes that you find in nature. Also, and because I love birds, I love these bits of scrap paper. You could also do this with crisp packets or soft plastic. The only catch here is that you need to make sure that the glue that you use is fit for recycling. Now, there is a recipe which I can share with you through the next Upstream Battle campaign email. I think it's got flour in it, and you can use that to stick materials down. Okay. And then there's this, which is something like printed shapes and then also bits of reused material. These are quite large. These are very large posters. It's just a little bit of inspiration of different things that you can use in a combination. And obviously the colors here are all, you would all need to make sure that they're also recyclable. This one is quite interesting. This is obviously a model made of found objects, right? And the key here is that obviously if it's all been littered, it's been cleaned. But when you were done displaying this, you would need to take it all apart and make sure that all the bits go into the recycling. You'll notice that there's, I don't know why I'm pointing, you can't see me, but there's soft plastic inside the bottles, and that would need to be removed so that they can be recycled because they're separate types of plastic, right? So it's just all considerations. But I quite like that one because it's a person shape, but the person is made of litter because that's where it's coming from. And some mosaics, again, with the glue, right, and the colors, obviously, but some ideas. I like how the one on the left has made fish shapes out of litter. So you can start thinking maybe about different colors and shapes that you might like to use. If you are thinking about, if you've been to Africa or you're thinking about your favorite place that's affected by marine litter, maybe there's different colors or shapes that you always notice when you're there. Maybe there's a specific landmark, like a shape, a hill that you want to copy the shape of in your artwork, or maybe there's lots of jellyfish where you're thinking of, so you'd like to copy that shape. Things that can remind you of the place that you're thinking of. And also, because I think it's really fun, I'm going to look at some famous artworks, and we'll have a wee chat about all the different colors and shapes that are in them too. Okay. Okay, so this one is my absolute favorite. I'll just admit that right now. So I had to find a way to include it, obviously. Sunflowers from Van Gogh. And it's one of a series of paintings of sunflowers that he made way back in 1880s, in the 1880s. Now, I chose this one because it's my favorite, but also because in this one, he was experimenting with different colors. So he painted a version of this one with a blue background, but then decided, nope, it has to be yellow, just like the flowers. And you wouldn't think that that would work because yellow vase, yellow flowers, yellow background, that sounds like it would just be way too bright. But this whole painting just radiates joy to me. I don't know why. Yellow is not usually my favorite color, But for some reason, I look at this painting and I just see happiness. And I'm wondering what you think of these colors. How does this painting make you feel? What do you think? I also like all the texture on the big fuzzy flowers at the back. I was very privileged to be able to see this painting in Pittsburgh many years ago, and you could get quite close to it. So I got to see some of the detail in the brush strokes, and it made me very happy. But I'm wondering what you think of all of this bright yellow. How does that make you feel? Maybe something you might need to think about for a minute because it's not a question you get asked a lot. Excuse me, I'm just gonna have a sip of tea. Bright and cheerful, warm and happy. Yes. All of the stories that I've read about this painting say that for Van Gogh, this painting represented gratitude. Um, and that makes me very happy. Happy, cheerful. And maybe that's not so much about the flowers, but maybe it's about the shapes and the colors that he used. Before I move on, maybe start to think. Maybe some of you have a famous painting that you've seen in a book or in a museum, or maybe one that you've done yourself. Um, it's your favorite. And I'm wondering if you could tell me what that is. You could share with me what that is. If you have one, a famous painting or sculpture or an artwork that you have done yourself, that's your absolute favorite, and how it makes you feel. Because not all of our favorites make us happy, right? Case in point, this one. What do you notice about this painting that's maybe different from the one before? This is Picasso's Guernica and was painted in 1937, quite a while ago now. And actually, I was going to save your famous paintings for later on, but someone has just made the exact point that I was hoping, in that someone has said the Mona Lisa is their favorite, and then someone directly after that said the Mona Lisa makes them feel gloomy, which is perfect because one of the points that I wanted to get across to everyone today is that you don't have to know a lot about art to know how it makes you feel. When I was thinking about what to talk about today, I actually had a real problem because it's not a subject that I usually come and talk to you about. As you know, I did have the privilege of studying art for a little while at university, but this is not what my day-to-day job is about. My day-to-day job is about climate change and litter, and it's not, I don't usually get to talk about art. And I thought to myself, how can I make sure that I give everyone enough knowledge and enough information? But it occurred to me that you can enjoy art no matter how much or how little you know about it. You don't have to be an expert on fine art in order to know how that painting or sculpture makes you feel. And that's exactly what we need to keep in mind when we're making our art pieces for this marine litter art competition. You don't have to be a total expert. You know how these shapes and colors and materials will make you feel, and that is what is important, is communicating those feelings and those messages through your art. So yes, this painting is rather abstract and cold and dark, and it's meant to be because it's an anti-war statement, basically. The twisted faces and lack of color convey sadness and despair. Sorry, I just made notes about each of the paintings and reminds us of the tragedies of war. And another thing that I wanted to get across to you, but I couldn't find an image that I was able to share with you, is that this painting is huge. It is a massive mural. Picasso had to get up on a ladder to paint the top bits of it. The size is part of the impact it has on its audience because it's it's just there, it surrounds you. It's very oppressive, I guess is a word that you would use. It's mural size, and there are hidden images inside the painting. There's a skull hidden in the body of the horse, and a bull formed in the horse's leg, and 3 daggers in the animal's tongues. So Picasso was trying to make a statement about how bad war is, and to remind people that it shouldn't happen if we can help it. The next one you've probably recognized from memes because it is that iconic, and that is Munch's The Scream. It is one of the most iconic and reproduced images in fine art. It has become almost a symbol for expressing shock, dismay, or surprise, and it might remind you of that scene in Home Alone where he's, ah, which is what it makes me think of because we watched that movie over the holidays. But I wonder what do you notice about this painting, and how did this make you feel? What emotions did this painting stir up for you? There are no wrong answers here, remember. Right? It's very, very important that there are no wrong answers. Mhm. Someone is saying it looks like there's a storm in the background. Yes. Some very strong lines, very strong wavy lines. Nothing is really straight except for the pathway, which cuts off in the distance. You can't really see into the background there. Scared. And one of the stories behind this painting was that he had some sad things going on with his family. He said he was walking along a canal and the sky was red, I'm guessing sunset or sunrise. And he said he felt a scream go through the universe. And I think that's a description of his anxiety over the things that he was having to deal with. You're right, it looks gloomy, confused, disoriented, shocked, petrified. The brushstrokes make you want to wiggle your body. Now, that if there's ever a description of art influencing emotions, that's a brilliant one. This painting does not stay still, does it? It seems like it wants to move off the canvas. And that just adds to the unsettled feeling that it might give you. I have one more, but this time, this one is a sculpture. Because, can't forget, I get stuck on paintings because I love painting. But you need to also remember that one of our options for making an artwork is to do sculpture or modeling as well. So I'm wondering, excuse me, you can probably guess from the title, it's Georgi's Melancholy, and it's quite a recent one. You probably can guess at the kinds of emotions it's trying to show you. But what do you think? How does this make you feel? And quite different answers here. One says peace and harmony, but also horrifying. Makes you feel weird, empty, lonely. Again, there's no wrong answers. Yep. Depressed, maybe. Yep. hmm Yeah. I think, yes, very cool that you can see the view through the sculpture. So this sculpture captures the raw emptiness that sadness and grief bring. And I don't want to end on a downer, really, but this is one of the most difficult emotions to express. Expressing sadness or grief is not an easy thing. I think with this one, it's particularly interesting how he has done this with an empty space instead of trying to um, show you what grief looks like. It's not there, but you know it. You know it. You know that there's an issue here, right? You can see the empty space, but where he might have tried to depict grief, right? Make it into something you can see. He's instead chosen an empty space, and it's up to you what is in there. And you can't see his face. Yes, despair and sadness without even seeing someone's face. And that's an important point too, because quite often we rely on people's facial expressions to know how they're feeling. And this time we've managed to show strong emotion without seeing someone's face. It looks like he's been swallowed by his feelings. Oh, that's deep. That's a good one. So I hope what you can see from these 4 examples is that you can show very strong emotions with shapes and colors. And also, it's important to note too with this figure that it's not a perfect human figure, right? It's not, you can tell it's human, but it's not like it distorted. It's not accurate. It's very rough, and the legs and the backs of the arms, the proportions are all wrong, but you still know what that is. It's a style of art for sure. But I guess the other point that I wanted to make is not that this isn't good, but it isn't what you might consider a perfect drawing or sculpture of a human being. And perfection is not what we're going for here. You don't have to be good at art. And I say good in quotation marks because good is up here, right? It's what you think your art is. And quite often we're very hard on ourselves and we think, well, that doesn't look the way that I meant it to, so it's not good. Well, it is. All art is good art. There it is. Okay. So now that we've looked at shapes and colors in famous artworks, we've looked at different textures and things in other examples of competitions and assignments that we've had before. So now that we've had all that input into our brains, how about what colors do you think make you feel happy or sad or angry? And maybe if you'd like to, you can think about how the marine litter competition made you feel. What color is that feeling? Someone says green. I'm thinking you mean green makes you happy. Green makes me very happy too. But my personal favorite is purple, and there is none on this slide, which is a shame, but purple is my favorite color. Now, the thing is, though, that different colors might make you feel happy, but it might make someone else feel very different. Green makes you feel happy because it reminds you of nature. While we're thinking of those, I'm just going to go back and have a look at some of your favorite paintings and artworks. I know that somebody had said Monet's Lilies. That's a very pretty picture. It's a very nice one. Yes. So we had the Mona Lisa and we had Monet. Right. So white makes you feel empty, Zoe. Okay. And happy colors can be yellow, pink, and light blue. Interesting how a lot of people are saying green makes them feel happy, and then other people are saying, well, no, yellow, pink, and light blue make me feel happy. So this is really subjective. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answers, but if you get to thinking about what colors make you feel which emotions, you'll have a better idea of what kinds of things you want to use in your artwork. White makes some of us anxious. Okay. Blue makes you feel happy. Red makes you feel angry. Purple makes you feel energized. Gray, lonely. Oh no. Different shades change your feelings. Well, this is the thing too. Now I had some slides that actually I think I might actually use. I had hidden them because I thought maybe they were not they weren't really useful, but that might not be the case. Hang on a sec. Because you're right. It depends on, and we're almost done. I know we're going to run out of time. But it depends on the shade. You're very right. So blue can be very calm, but it can also feel very cold and dark to some people, right? Brown reminds us of a new beginning, like a new cardboard box. Ooh, it's exciting to see what's inside or what you could make. Well, that's lovely. Maybe brown could be part of your art, and red can be energetic, but could also be brash and loud. Yellow makes many happy, but can also be jarring. Green makes many people feel relaxed, but depends on the shade. It can also remind you of feeling sick. And purple can make something feel important, but it can also feel ominous, and it's also my fear. So just going to go back one sec, because following on from this workshop, if you still need some inspiration of what you might make for your artwork, or maybe you want to capture your ideas that you've thought of today, a good way of doing that is a mood board. Now, I've done a very quick one. You can do this either on a piece of paper, in a jotter maybe, or a piece of, what's it called, flip chart paper, or you could do it on a slide if you don't want to use paper, right? And think of some colors, some shapes, and some images that maybe inspire you. Now, I've just put this one together very quickly, and it's pictures of places that have a lot of litter in them. I like the idea of fish shapes. So there's this from tasteofshetland.com. Different fish shapes that are native to the area around Shetland. I like the shape of a skate, quite like that shape, and some colors that remind me of the beach. And also, it seems to be a lot of plastic bottles in these pictures. So I put the background as plastic bottles. Now, maybe you could make a skate out of pieces of plastic bottle. That could be a good artwork to make. Right, I'm going to whiz past these again. That's just about all that I have time for today. Unless anybody has a specific question that you might want to ask, I wanted to remind you that to send in your entry, you need to email us at upstreambattle@keepscotlandbeautiful.org. That's how you send in your entry. And you've still got time yet. You've got until the 7th of February, so that's plenty of time. It'd be great to see entries that, if you have any engagement with wider community, it'd be great to see that too in your entry. And how to send in a painting or sculpture, you would send in a photograph of that. And remember to send in your words as well. Miss Allison is asking if it's one entry per class, you choose your favorite one. Well, you can work collaboratively as a class on an entry, or you could have groups in your class do them and then choose one, I guess. I guess that's up to you. But it might be easier to have more pupils involved. I don't know how big your class is. That's why I'm not quite sure. But yes, it is one entry per class or group of pupils. I think we're just not looking for 25 entries per school because we get a bit swamped. Just while making sure that there aren't any more questions, I want to leave you with something inspiring. Again, my favorite artist, Van Gogh, says, "If I'm worth anything later, I'm worth something now, for wheat is wheat, even if people think it is a grass in the beginning." And what this is trying to get at is what I was saying earlier. All art is good art. You does not have to be perfect the first time you do it. Please don't think that, if something doesn't look the way that you'd thought it would look the first time you did it, that it's not good enough. All art is good art, and all art is worthwhile art. There's one more question about how can you use your classroom watercolor paint? The answer is probably, but you'd need to check that it can go in the recycling. Without knowing what's in the paint, it's kind of hard to tell. But if you tell me what kind of paint it is in email, I can look into that for you. But watercolor, probably, yes. Oh, speaking of watercolor, as an example of art does not have to be perfect, I wanted to share my birds with you. These are my as yet unfinished watercolor paintings of birds. I need more practice, but all art is good art, right? So I'm really looking forward to seeing your art as well. Thank you so much for joining me. If we hang up just now and you think of a question, you can always just email us, and I will send the glue for the recipe for the glue. Not a problem. Thank you very much. I can't wait to see your art.